Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. I'm going to be showing you today how to make an awesome Christmas wine. Today is August 25th, 2025, and we want to shoot for December 25th of 2025 and have this ready by then. So this is going to be a Christmas wine, a cranberry orange wine that can be served two different ways. So you kind of get two wines out of the same batch. You can serve it as a crisp, refreshing, good holiday wine that brings back all those holiday vibes. Or you can also serve it as a mulled wine, which is where we would heat it up. And for about 10 minutes, we'll give out a little bag to our friends and family that they can steep some spices like clove and cinnamon and some other things in there. So that's pretty neat too. You kind of get two different wines out of one batch. We'll be shooting for about 4 gallons today, but we generally will end up with 3 gallons. That's why I try to shoot for 3.5 to 4 gallons. It allows me to have an extra half gallon to a gallon in a carboy next to my big 3-gallon carboy, so that whenever I'm racking it and I lose some wine, I can actually fill that up with my own wine and not have to fill it up with water or juice or anything else in that headspace that we can get there. We want to minimize that headspace, minimize the oxygen so the oxidization of the wine doesn't occur, and that's important. Let me tell you a little bit about the ingredients today. We're going to be using 20 pounds of cranberries and the zest of 10 oranges and the juice of 10 oranges. We're going to use 12 pounds of sugar, and that puts us right at about 13.5 to 14% alcohol. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to do it. All right, so what we're going to do first is I'm going to make the sugar that I need for the must, and we're going to start with 12 pounds, 11 to 12 pounds of sugar. We're shooting for 12 pounds. I don't know if I actually have 12 pounds left. I'm on my last bag here. We're going to be going on vacation in a few weeks. This is going to be my last wine before we go on vacation, so I want to kind of use all this up. And we're going to be shooting for 13% to 13.5% alcohol. So we'll just pour that in there. What I have so far is a gallon of water in there. And we're going to make a 4-gallon batch today. The reason that is, and you can see that's the drinking water I use right there. The reason that is I'm going to be giving this away for Christmas. This is a Christmas wine. So what better thing to do than to give it to family and friends? So I want to make sure that, traditionally make a 3-gallon batch, but I'm going to make a 4-gallon batch. That way I know for sure that I've got some backfill and I don't have to use any other kind of wines or any other water or anything or juice. I can just use the wine itself. We're about 5.5, or 5.5 rather, to actually fill the wine. Because whenever you're going through the natural process of filtering wine, whether that be with bentonite or with super clear or both or filtering, you're always going to lose wine. And we want to try to get a true 15 bottles out of this. All right, so there you can see we got 12 pounds exactly of sugar. I had to use just a little bit of my table sugar here to fill in the last 4 ounces, but you can see how full the pot is here. It does not need to be this full. It's because there's 12 pounds of sugar in here. I put a whole gallon in because I want to know that I have exactly 1 gallon in this. Usually I would just tell you, just fill your pot just enough to cover the sugar, just enough to dissolve the sugar. You don't need to make it this full. I'm doing this as a personal preference for this one because I want to make sure that I nail my 4 gallons. And I want to be able to tell you guys the exact amount of water that I put into this, so you can recreate this as identical as possible to this recipe. All right, let's get the stove started here. I'm going to put this at about a 5. So we're going to be at a medium high heat here. Again, what we're looking for is dissolving, not boiling. Okay, that's the key here. And I should have mentioned before this, everything is sanitized. The pot's been sanitized. The stir's been sanitized. Even the bowl that I set the stir down into, that's been sanitized. We want to make sure that everything is as clean as possible. So we're going to stir this up. Sugar can stick to the bottom of the pan and it can burn, and you don't want those flavors in your wine. So what we're going to do here is just stir this up, get it all mixed in there. And then over the next 10 minutes or so, maybe 12 minutes, this will start to really dissolve and become clear. And that's all we're looking for. We're not looking for a boil. That's the important part. So we'll come back whenever this is ready. All right, guys, so it's been about, I don't know, probably about 7 or 8 minutes. This is all we're looking for. So you can see everything is kind of fully dissolved. It's not going to be crystal clear because as long as sugar is heated, it's going to cause kind of like this haze, at least in my experience. If I turn off the heat and let it sit for a second, this will get pretty clear. But I don't really care about it being clear right now. If I were back sweetening, I might care a little bit more. And we'll talk about that in another video whenever this wine comes to time for bottling. Right now in the must stage, all I want to do is just dissolve it. And this will be perfect. All right, so while I get the area set up, I'm going to let these thaw out. All 24 pounds of cranberries here from 3 different stores. So while those are thawing out, let's get everything sanitized and set up. So we're going to sanitize everything. That includes the counters. This is just Star San in a bottle that's been diluted. Star San is, I think, pretty much every brewer, home wine maker, vintner, mead makers, go-to when it comes to sanitizing your areas properly. So we'll just let this kind of loosely dry on there, and that'll sanitize that area for us. All right, so let's go through some of the tools of the trade real quick. Got a bottle of Star San there just in case I need it as I go through the process. This is our wine thief. This is what we're going to use to load up this glass tube you see here that we're going to be putting our hydrometer in. That's going to tell us exactly what our alcohol content is. We're going to be shooting for about 13.5%, and when we get there I'll show that to you. This is going to be our airlock that will fill with sanitizer, and that will sit on top of the bucket as it ferments. This is going to be what we use to stir up our must. We're going to use these 2 spoons, and I'll show you how to crush some candum tablets that we're going to put into our initial must. So I have some additives out here, and I just wanted to talk about them just for a second. We're going to use a dual process in this with this one, and this is Fermade K and Fermade O. Fermade K has DAP in it, and that's kind of like hot-shotting your initial must with a very strong nutrient to get it kind of started. But then 24 hours later, 48 hours later, and 72 hours later, I will add Fermade O at a measured amount, which is going to be 1.3 grams at 24 hours, 48 hours, and 72 hours. And that keeps it going. Sometimes when yeast shoots up really fast, the nutrients can then be consumed, and then the yeast will go through a stress phase at the end or the middle to end, and it will cause some off flavors, off smells, and we're trying to avoid that a little bit. So acid blend would normally go into my wines. However, we are not going to use acid blend today. I got it out here to show you guys. The reason we're not going to use it is because the pH of cranberries is very low. It's very acidic, and we don't want to make it too tart. We can always add in acid later, but we're going to start without using this. So this one we're not going to use. We are going to use wine tannin. We're going to use a half a teaspoon of this per gallon. So we will have 4 teaspoons. Excuse me. We will have 2 teaspoons, half a teaspoon per gallon. So 2 teaspoons of wine tannin. We will be using pectic enzyme, but not in the initial must. And it is also going to be half a teaspoon, so 2 teaspoons for 4 gallons. The pectic enzyme is great. This is going to help clear any of the pectin that's inside of the fruit with the cranberry and the oranges, but it's a very fragile enzyme. So we're going to add it 12 hours after we add our candum tablets, and we'll talk about that. This is another yeast nutrient that you can use, and it's from North Mountain. This contains DAP, which is the same thing in Fermade K, but it also contains urea, which a lot of people don't like to put in. It's banned in a lot of winemaking. This has food safe urea in it, so it's absolutely fine. I've used it so many times, to be honest. But I'm just giving you an option here. This is a one shot and go. You put in half a teaspoon per gallon in whatever you're going to be making. So 4 gallons would be 2 teaspoons in the initial must, and you never have to worry about the yeast nutrient again. But your yeast can stress a little bit towards the end of a fermentation or a hard fermentation. So just keep that in mind. These are going to be our candum tablets, which are just potassium metabisulfate turned into tablets. Makes it a lot easier. And we're going to be using 4 of these today, since we're going to be using 1 per gallon. 4 gallons, we'll be using 4 tablets, and we'll be using these 2 spoons to crush them up the easiest way that I know how. In addition to our tools and our additives that we have here, we have a small must bag. These are reusable, washable, and all the things you see, guys, that are going to be out here, minus, I guess, the spoons, but all the things you see that I use are going to be included in my links in the description down below. But this is just a small must bag. We're going to be putting the zest of 10 oranges into this. We're not going to put in the whole orange, just the zest of 10 oranges, and this is a cool little bag that'll work perfectly for that. This is going to be a larger must bag. I've reused this, I don't know, 15 times, 20 times probably. This is a larger must bag, and this is what's going to hold our cranberries after we crush them up. So you'll see how that goes. We have the lid to our bucket, and that's going to be the hole that the airlock goes into. Those of you that are very amateur and beginners, those of you that I'm boring, you can skip forward. This is going to be a fermentation bucket. So this is a 6.5 gallon bucket. You'll see there, it says 4, but as we fill this whole thing up, it's actually about 6.5 gallons. So we should be up to about this line today. Maybe even with just the liquid volume part of it. Once we add the fruit, we're going to be pretty close up here to the lid for fermentation. Probably about this much space, which is perfectly fine. We're going to clean it up from the last one. It's pretty clean. That's the stain you see in there. We'll get this going. So you have a fermentation bucket. I do my sanitizing in another fermentation bucket because I have tons of them. So we're going to be adding some Star San into this. We're going to get all of our tools sanitized up. Then we'll get started by crushing the fruit. All right, one thing I wanted to mention as I'm going through the sanitation process here, as you can see, There's a sanitation bucket. All of our nice stuff is out there and sanitized. This is a crusher for the home. I'm gonna spray a bunch of Star San in the initial holder up here. This is the part that holds your fruit as it slides down the conveyor here and gets crushed. But you don't need this. This is just something that I personally use. It's linked down in my description if you're interested in it. It's actually very affordable for the home winemaker, to be honest. But what you get out of it is just a perfect crusher. It doesn't just destroy everything. You're getting good juice out of it, and you're just breaking the skins and all those cranberries, as you'll see. So I really enjoy it. But if you don't have that, let me show you what else you can use. Just this is what I used before I got my crusher. Just a hand potato smasher. Put this in maybe a big silver pan that you put like a turkey in, or just any kind of something to catch the juice from the cranberries, and then you just mash them up, make sure that they're not frozen. This works perfectly. You don't need the crusher, so I just wanted to point that out. All right, so we let this sit while we went to the store, and you can see that that's 12 pounds of sugar in there. See all the way to the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and pour this 12 pounds of sugar in. Remember, we used a gallon to make this. Try not to splash because it is the stickiest substance known to man. All right, there we go. Now we'll put our additives in. All right, for this 4-gallon batch, we're gonna do 4 cadmium tablets. Remember the 2 spoons that we had before. What we're gonna do is just crush those up and dump them in. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're just looking to crush the tablet up so it more easily dissolves in the must. All right, those are our 4 cadmium tablets, or our potassium metabisulfite. Now we will add in our wine tannin. So remember, we're going to do a half a teaspoon per gallon. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Wine tannin is going to give us that nice kind of red wine vibe, or grape varietal vibe. Wine tannin is going to give a little bit of structure, some body, and definitely want that in your fruit wine. So this is the Ferment K. I'm going to add in 1.3 grams now, because later I'll add in 1.3 grams of Ferment O at 3 different intervals, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for right now, I'm going to add in this first energizer, which is going to be the Ferment K for the yeast, that I'm going to add in about 24 hours. We're not going to add the yeast yet. Now that we've got those additives in, we're just going to give it a little bit of a stir, get them mixed up just a little bit. They're not going to really break up and break down until fermentation. You'll see the wine tannin. People kind of freak out about that. The wine tannin just tends to stick together, and it takes a little bit for that to kind of break down. So don't worry about that. This is just going to be building the must, and we're about to add the fruit now. All right, so I'm going to add the must bag now, because then we're going to put the crusher right over this, which is pretty awesome. It fits on here perfectly in any bucket. We're going to tighten this down. Make sure it's secure in place there. Now we're going to put the crusher on top. So you'll see that, very easy, just hand driven. So as I spin this, it's going to go ahead and crush that fruit. All right, so I was getting everything sanitized and set up. This is all the fruit I brought in from outside. It's been thawing out because it was frozen, just got it from the store. And as I'm adding these cranberries in, remember what I was saying, this isn't necessary. This is just an extra step. I like to make professional grade wine at home to give out to friends, to family, but also to eventually do tastings next year for our winery. So, but a potato smasher works great. I've used it many, many times. This is just something, it's a small investment, but in my opinion, it's absolutely worth it. Like I said, if you guys are interested in this, I can maybe do a review on it, but it's also linked down in the description below. So you can see, this is what it looks like after the crusher. It's perfectly to the texture that I like. It's crushed up. There's still a couple of full ones in here. The skin's broken on some are more smashed than others, and that's perfectly where I like it at. This is pretty full, and it looks full, but that's because the must bag is hanging up a little bit. So once I close this up and put a zip tie on it, it'll actually lower down into the sugar water or the must and the additives, and it will fit just fine. All right, now that we have the must of those 10 oranges. I'm going to put them into this small must bag here that's been sanitized. Get all that good zest off. And we're also going to use a zip tie. These zip ties are pretty awesome. I think I have them linked down there. If not, they're just silicone zip ties, reusable, and you can sanitize them. It's pretty great. I use the same things on my must bags to keep the fruit in. Now we'll cut these up and we'll juice them. So let's go ahead and add our first gallon of water. Remember, we've already added 1 gallon into the sugar. I'm just going to kind of pour this around, get it in there. Take a hydrometer reading initially just to see where we're at with it. There should be a lot of juice and water that came out of the fruit as it's been sitting in the must like that. So we won't have to add a full 4 gallons by any means. All right, let's stir it up a little bit and get that sugar water and all those additives stirred in. See that really pretty pink color from the cranberries. This is why it's important to put that zip tie on the cranberries as well, or on any kind of fruit, because this hard pushing, this is a really full bag of fruit, this really hard pushing it around, what would happen is this would just pop open, and I can get it all the way to bottle in less than 30 days. And I do that in a very systematic way. And the very first simple way of that is to put your fruit in a must bag. We ended about 1.102 at about 13.5%, which is right on the money where we want to be. In total, we added the first gallon to the sugar, 1 more gallon, 1 more gallon, and about almost half of another, or a quarter. So about 3 1/4, 3.5 gallons is what we added total. All right, so you can see the distance from the must bag up to the top of the ferment bucket is a little shorter than I'd like, but it'll be fine. We'll keep an eye on it, but we'll wait now 24 hours to add the yeast. All right, so there is our finished must for right now. It's gonna sit for 24 hours. The airlock is on. This is just Star San. I just put sanitizer in here. The must is sitting into about right here, or about right here, which is gonna be enough air. I'm gonna be stirring this, and I'll be showing you that. I'll be stirring this about twice a day, the first 5 days, and then we'll let it sit after that. But I'll be putting in oxygen, so it'll get plenty of oxygen. The biggest thing to worry about is sometimes you can push your air stopper too far into your bucket here, and if your must is really close or starts fermenting and starts getting a little crazy, it'll just come right out the top of the air stopper and make a mess. So, but right now, 24 hours, we'll put in our yeast, and we'll talk about the yeast whenever it's time for that. So now we're gonna add the 2 teaspoons of pectic enzyme. I already threw 1 teaspoon in there, so we just need 1 more. And these are half teaspoon scoops. And 1 more. And we'll just mix it in, make sure it's thoroughly in there. Pectic enzyme actually absorbs pretty quickly. All right, guys, thanks for watching part 1 of our Christmas cranberry orange inspired wine. We're at the point of fermentation, so we're gonna let that ferment. Some things to keep in mind during fermentation. For the first 5 days, at least the first 5 days, we're gonna wanna stir that twice a day. Make sure that we get that oxygen in there. That yeast really needs that oxygen to multiply in the beginning stages, especially in fermentation, so just make sure you're doing that. Once that bubble starts to slow down, you don't need to stir it anymore. Just let it keep going until the bubbles completely stop. We'll be having part 2 so that you can see what to do in the next phase of this entire process. If you like this kind of content, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. And until then, cheers.